The kids done the best they can.
set list when the Eagles take over live in concert this Saturday evening. It's the Hotel California tour. They made a stop at the Forum in LA October 22nd, 1976. They pretty much did the entire album, not front to back. That was a more recent innovation, doing albums front to back. But it was a Hotel California tour. Eagles headline live in concert this Saturday evening. We also have sets from Cheap Trick, and this weekend is the Cheap Trick Heart Show at the Spectrum Center. Ride ticket winners have a good time. We'll have sets from Cheap Trick coinciding with that show. Make sure you listen to the ride on the way to the Spectrum Center. Cheap Trick, David Gilmour, and yes, tune in this Saturday evening at 9. Legendary performances by the icons of rock, live in concert on the ride. Tony Scott here. The briefest of pit stops, Pink Floyd on the other side.
Royal Flush Tour 2024. This Saturday night, Spectrum Center. Another episode of After School. My name is Carowinds. I'm a trained psychiatrist, researcher. Today we're talking about common misconceptions people have about depression and antidepressants. Without further ado, here we go. There are a number of myths about depression and antidepressants that are hard to dislodge. Most notably is the myth that depression is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain. If you ask people in Western countries, about 80 to 90% will say they believe this to be true. The chemical imbalance theory is the colloquial description of the hypothesis that depression is caused by low serotonin, a chemical transmitter in the brain. This idea was first proposed by academics, but was propagated widely by drug companies as part of their marketing push for antidepressants that increase serotonin in the short term. The selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs, that are so familiar to us today. These drugs became blockbusters and one of the most widely used classes of drugs in the world. Most people still don't know there is no evidence that depression is caused by low serotonin, and researchers no longer think this is true. When people stop antidepressants, they can often experience mood, anxiety, and a host of other symptoms. They can often conclude, or are told by doctors, that they are experiencing a return of an underlying condition, and therefore need to stay on these drugs, sometimes for life. However, we now know that withdrawal symptoms from these drugs can be very similar to anxiety and depression, and can be easily mistaken for them. So these symptoms are not a sign that people need to stay on them, but may indicate they need to come off them more carefully and slowly. There has been new research in this field on hyperbolic taking, a specific way of slowly reducing their dose, and an advance over old-fashioned ways of taking that can help them become more safe. Before I talk much more about these ideas, I just want to say that many people feel that they have been helped by antidepressants, and I in no way want to take that away from them or shame them for taking it. That's the last thing I want to do, because aside from being psychiatric researcher and trained psychiatrist, I myself have used antidepressants for 20 years, although I'm now sober. So I am in the same boat as lots of other people. My major aim is that people are more informed about what these drugs can and can't do. One of the most common ways of treating mental health conditions, like anxiety and depression, has become
direction for 7. Gale of wind threat should stay on the coast like here. Hey, this is an I-tornado. That is tornado warning is back up in Ohio. We'll go back to that in a minute. Before that comes in, we'll be taking a quick 60-second break. I'll be back in 60 seconds. We're going to start our media temporarily, who is in Fort Worth, Texas.
Want to take a ride? From the high desert and the great American Southwest, exclusively on Sirius XM Radio. This is Dark Matter with your host, Art Bell. Extra. Here's Art. Terrestrial
Radio. I'm in a hurry, I guess. Sorry, Ross. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Dark Riders. I love that. I love that term, Dark Riders. I'm sure it'll get stolen. Everything else right here is getting stolen from me. But it's all right, because remember, it originated here with me. All right, I've got a whole bunch of stuff I want to say. Before we get to our guest, Jason Martell, who's going to be talking about what came before us. That's right, what came before us. I want to say hi to my 2 little roses over there at the house. Hi, Asia. Our little 6-year-old first grader is under the weather. She's got a temperature varying between 100 and 102. So, not feeling well, and so every night she wishes me extra good luck as I leave. So extra, get better. And of course, Aaron, who is taking care of her, and me, who's hiding from the virus here. Been lucky. Really, I have been lucky lately. I didn't get the last poll. Now we're going to see if I get this one. Doing international living is interesting. I know, of course, live over in the Philippines, where we have the benefit of Asia going to preschool there, and every available Southeast Asian virus I've had them. Then preschool here, and all the North American viruses. They've been interesting. And now first grade and the first grade viruses. It's lucky I'm here at all tonight, actually. We had, before I get into that, I've done some audio adjustments. So I would like your objective opinion, please, as you listen on XM, as you listen on Sirius, and as you listen on the web, whether the audio sounds okay to you. I found it very disconcerting. Some people were telling me that Skype sounded better than I did. Very disconcerting. And Skype is good. I'm not supposed to be studio mic good. Anyway, looking on here, we have the forecast originally for, get this folks, 75-mile-an-hour winds. Then they could have gone 70 down to 65 and 55. And today we have 50-mile-an-hour winds. It was looking like that. So I was thinking, well, we're going to have internet. We're going to have time. We're going to have peace. But, it's turned out okay, so we're here. And we guys need this evening right up. Thank goodness. The desert can rage. Believe me. Alright, so the wind didn't get there. What I almost did there Saturday was I was standing in the living room and I felt something on the back of my neck move, and I reached back and slapped it hard, and I came away with a handful of dew, and this thing fell on the floor that looked like To me, the Godzilla of spiders wasn't really a baby creature like this does. Anyway, I slapped it, killed it, but not before it nailed me three fists, 1 million and 2 rings. It nailed me before, and I thought, this is it. When you go in the back of a neck like this, now, the spider either crawling at some point, and that ran it, or throwing it, I thought from the ceiling. Either way, it didn't matter. I thought I was toast. And I did a little run this spider in the hospital. I really actually did think I was toast. I thought, well, if it's poison, it's in your neck, it's right next to the brain, and it's going to be fast. So I didn't go to the hospital. The hospital came to meet the fire department came, medics. They checked me out, they were on the report, and they need all these numbers. Social security numbers and on. Anyway, bottom line is I'm okay. The spider, they had me save the spider in a little jar with some bread to keep it in good shape so that if I did suddenly fall over, I'd be able to take my aggressor with me to the hospital and look at him and tell me what he is. Pretty good. There's a picture on the website, by the way, of the spider, or actually only what's left of the spider. The majority of him is goo. So if you get factor, right? Glue all over my hand, glue over the back of my neck, the side of the back of my neck. And there's a picture up there of my neck tooth where he bit me. So I continue to be here by the grace of... Sorry, I'm out at the God, by the grace of God. Now, our ghost picture contest. It's over. But it's not over judging-wise. I want you all to go to artbell.com, and we've got some tragically bad ghost pictures, and we've got some real winners. I mean some really, really good ghost pictures. So you be the judge. The winner, gets a radio, a 1-year subscription to Sirius XM, so go up there and judge. You are the ones that are going to pick the winner. It's that simple, really. You're going to pick the winner, not me, not the Ghost Master, you. So you need to go up there and give kudos and points to the good ghost photographs. Okay? Kind of weave through them. And those stories, by the way, and we'll announce the winner of the ghost photograph contest on Spooky Matter on Thursday. It's coming right up. If you have a ghost story, there's still time to get it in. Send me a simple summary of your ghost story and include a phone number at the bottom, and perhaps we will call you. That's right, we may call you. Alright, things to see on the website tonight. Oh heavens, I have a video for you that I'm telling you, discovered by a local Pueblo, Colorado TV station. This, ladies and gentlemen, is and I don't want to give it all away. Here's all I'll say. It's about a woman who got caught in a flood. They had a lot of floods there. And she's in her car as it sinks. But there is an ending to this story that will blow you away. I'm serious. Is that good? So you need to go up to the website and then leaf through, at the front there you'll see the picture of the oil rig. And you've got little arrows and sort of, or just wait, and it'll click through. When you get to the one Pueblo, Colorado, oh my. You need to see that and see it to the very end. Alright? Don't stop halfway through or stop once you see her rescued, because the punchline, which will send chills down your spine. I mean, this probably gets near the level of a miracle. Right? It's all on artbell.com. Also, I sent Keith, though I don't know that he's put it up yet, the Dome of the Rock UFO. You remember that? Somebody sent 4 sync cameras in of that UFO. And of course, as I mentioned, the oil platform. Other reasons to go to artbell.com? Well, the wormhole for one. where you can send me a message. Just find the wormhole and send me a message. It will go in Arizona and back out again here in Nevada, right in front of me. An Oklahoma school teacher says she's seen heaven's pearly gates and lived to tell the tale. Crystal Medeiros' near-death experience brought her face to face with a God that she spent a lifetime doubting. And the Altus, Oklahoma woman says the only reason that she's even alive is so she can tell others now. About 10 to 20% of people who go into cardiac arrest or clinical death have lucid memories of their brush with death. She remembers. She claims she talked to God. She was treated for pancreatitis in 2009 when an unexpected reaction to pain medication caused her to stop breathing. That's it. On the way to room temperature, as Rush would say. But she had this amazing experience, and this is a really, really big topic that I want to talk to you about. I want to have a serious discussion about it, no pun intended. So we're going to be looking for people who have had, well, death and an experience that they would be willing to relate, and then life again. It is an intensely interesting subject for me, as you know, as I hear the footsteps. I'm 68 years old now, so I can hear footsteps. It's a very interesting topic. So if you've had something like that, email me, artbell@artbell.com. Looking very briefly at the news, you were all hoping that immigration reform would happen this year. Doesn't look so good now. They're just not going to agree on anything, and if anything's broken, I'll tell you, the immigration system is, I know, personal experience, is really broken. In fact, here's how broken it is. If you send paperwork to the Immigration and Naturalization Service, and if that paperwork is lost, even if you have a receipt showing that they received it, stamped it, doesn't matter. It's your fault. Not their fault. It's your fault. Even if you can prove they received it, signed for it, it's your fault. And that's only an example of what it's like. It needs overhaul, so let's hope they get to it. With website woes ongoing, the administration Monday granted a 6-week extension that'll be until March 31st for Americans to sign up for their shiny new health care coverage and pay whatever they're going to have to pay. Maybe the administration thought people out here were still using dial-up. The governors of Pacific Coastal U.S. states, that'll be California, Oregon, Washington, I guess, and a Canadian province to boot, are all going to begin coordinating policies that place a price on greenhouse pollution, greenhouse gas pollution, and mandating the use of cleaner burning fuels or else. So all of that's going on. Don't forget, come Thursday, Spooky Matter begins. No guests. I never ever have guests on that channel. Spooky Matter will be ghost stories only. And while I thought there's no way the people at that other program could step lower than the things that have already happened, now I've heard they're poaching our ghosts. That's right. A good dozen of our ghosts have reported that they've been poached. They'll be on the other program. Just kidding. Well, okay, here we go. I love long-form talk radio, especially one with only a couple of breaks, every hour. Mostly content. For over 15 years, Mr. Jason Martell has been one of the leading researchers and lecturers specializing in ancient advanced technologies. Mr. Markel's research has been featured worldwide on numerous TV networks: Discovery Channel, History Channel, Sci-Fi Channel, BBC, and others. Today, Mr. Markel is working on his next scientific recreation of ancient technology based on data obtained from the Sumerian cuneiform cylinder seals from 3000 BC. He is also planning several groundbreaking international research expeditions. Expeditions focus on gaining access to ancient Sumerian artifacts and other archaeological relics not currently accessible to the public. In other words, secret stuff. In addition to his research, Mr. Markel is founder of www.booyahmedia.com. How's that for a name? E-O-O-Y-A. booyahmedia.com, a leading mobile technology company. Here is Mr. Jason Martel. Jason, welcome to Dark Matter.
Hey, Art, thank you so much for having me on your show.
You're most welcome. I'm really looking forward to this. I want to qualify the beginning of the show here, Jason, by saying I'm kind of a skeptic when it comes to this sort of thing. However, I am ready for you to try and convince me, because I would love to believe it is so.
Well, I know you're a seasoned pro in these topics, so it's kind of an honor for me to just have these conversations directly with you and see how you respond.
Okay, good. So what we're talking about here is man or something before man. In other words, something so old that it rose up as a civilization of sorts and became extinct before we ever arrived on the planet, human beings. Is that
Yeah.
fair? Yes?
That's pretty much right on the head, Art. Diving into that a little deeper, basically, when I first started to look into these topics, I was 21, I'm now 39, and I started to be very interested in realizing that most of the ancient cultures that we're aware of, the infamous ones, the Egyptians and Mayans and India and such, they're all referencing a lost culture. Now, we only talk about it as Atlantis or Lemuria, but science has actually been turning the tables in the last 15 years, in that topics like Atlantis or these lost civilizations are really starting to come back into the scientific focus to find cultures that existed beyond what we know of today. As Sumer, ancient Egypt, which we put that date at around 3800 BC, is when the civilizations that we know of today kind of sprung up out of the Stone Age.
All right. Is there truly enough time in the evolution of the Earth itself, I'm talking about the Earth itself, for life to have actually started, evolved here on Earth, or was it life, do you think, sent here perhaps already whole and complete?
Well, let me give you a little bit of background on how I got interested in these topics, just for your audience and for you as well, and kind of answer that question. When I was in college, as I mentioned, someone had just kind of mentioned to me. Now, I had no interest in aliens or ancient history or anything. I was a waiter, and I was a surfer, and just a normal college student. But then someone just kind of mentioned to me that there was possibly pyramids in a face on Mars, and that NASA had taken these photos. And I was very skeptical, and was like, why would NASA hide something like that? It turns out, Art, that I was going to school in San Diego, and Malin Space Science Systems was 2 blocks away from me. So, as I started to listen to your show, and Richard Hoagland and other people, as a young layman college student, I became very interested in, are there actually artificial structures on Mars? So I contacted Dr. Mike Malin directly. Dr. Mike Malin is the principal scientist in charge for the last 30 years of the cameras that we place on all our orbiters.
That's right. I have spoken to him a number of times.
Yes. And so as a call, I reached out to Dr. Malin and said, listen, is there any possibility that these structures on Mars are artificial? And he said, well, no, these are all natural, sand and wind eroded objects, nothing intelligent to see here. That kind of made my eyebrows raise a little higher, right? So what I started to do is just really take my focus off of Mars, because this is on another planet, when I realized there's structures here all over the Earth that we can't explain, and that's kind of led me on the path of what we're going to talk about tonight.
May I stop you enough to ask if you have reviewed the work of Richard C. Hoagland?
Of course I have. Bought the Monuments of Mars, I think 2 editions, had him sign one, went to his birthday party in Del Mar many years back. I think the first time I met him was at a book signing of yours, which was in Encinitas, California. Again, well over 10 years ago.
All right, well, I have been a skeptic with Richard as well, although the last time he was on the program here in Dark Matter, he did hit me, Jason, with something that I found. He called it number 9. I don't suppose you've seen number 9, have you?
No.
It's an artifact on Mars, Jason, and the damn thing has a pipe sticking out of it. I mean, you might call it a rock, even though there's other aspects of it that are just startling, but it has a perfectly round pipe sticking out of it. And there's no way, Jason, that this is a natural object. Simple as that. I mean, that one got me. So if you have an opportunity to view what's called number 9, it's probably still up on my website. Take a look at that and let me know what you think.
I'll definitely check it out. But he's always been infamous for finding artifacts and things that. And things that I guess we're really never going to know until we send a manned mission. But I definitely was very intrigued initially by the Cydonia complex, the geometry and the math being displayed there, which really made me focus on a lot of these ancient cultures and raised the question for me, where do we really come from?
And NASA always kind of poo-pooed the kids on Mars, right?
Yes, they did. I even refer to in my lectures sometimes when I show a chronological time range from 76 until, I think, 2009 with various images. And one of them, to this day, still called the cat box image.
Here's the thing I was going to point out, Jason. Even though they poo-pooed it, I noticed they spent a disproportionate amount of time going back to Cydonia. So, while they publicly poo-pooed it, they kept going back. Now that's got to mean something.
Right. Well, I think you and I and many of your listeners are on the belief that there is a public space program, and that's publicly reported, there's also a non-public space program, which is a little more hard to track and put our hands around. But I lean less on the cover-up of NASA simply because I realize there's a political backup in that some engineers have been working at NASA for 19 years, making some little arm that's going to be on the rover, and this little arm's going to stick into the dirt and look for some amino acids. But there's no rabbit catcher or Martian catcher or something that's going to actually identify life. We don't have any instruments actually deployed on any of our rovers that are going to, scientifically confirm life. We're only looking for signs of life. So we're not quite there yet. But if anyone does pay attention, it has been very educating for me, just as a civilian, to see that, what they release from the surface of Mars, there is what appear to be vegetation and questionable objects, as we were talking about. So it does, I think, raise a little bit of curiosity.
All right. Let me pose this to you. There are things there that really do raise your eyebrows. Now, is it possible that NASA is well aware that there are artifacts on Mars from somebody or something that was there earlier, and they're releasing these photographs, and when somebody finally goes, oh my God, that's absolutely not some natural formation, that's artificial, And when they finally do that, NASA can say, yep, that's kind of what we've been suspecting too, and we've been right up front with you because we've released all the photographs. Up to you.
Right. Well, this kind of leads to what we're going to talk about with some of the geometry and megalithic monuments here on Earth. I think the answer to that, Art, is if we ever do send people back to the moon, publicly, or to Mars, what we need to do are look at some of these monuments and some of the alignments astronomically that take place. Because here on Earth, there are monuments built all over the world, on every continent, that are specifically aligned to star constellations. And these repeat, these alignments repeat. So it's very possible that some of these other structures and geometrical diagrams are probably on the moon and Mars as well, and will collaborate further with what we have here on Earth.
Okay. All right, let's come back to Earth then. The theory of panspermia, what is that?
Right, so there's a scientific term called panspermia, which basically says that in order for evolution here on Earth to actually have taken place in the 4.7 billion years that, it's been in Earth, there's just not enough time frame. The analogy is, if a tornado went to a junkyard and assembled a 747, that's the likelihood that all the elements would be, swung together in this primordial soup hit by lightning. So panspermia is just a theory, and there's even a modified one called direct panspermia, which means life arrives whole and complete here. Direct panspermia would simply be that someone sent life here, whole and complete, which I kind of like. But that is a scientific term, and it does at least step into the doorway of explaining evolution here on Earth at a life system level. But when we get to the human being topic, I think there's a much more interesting discussion around what isn't a Darwinian evolution from something ever simplistic coming more complex. We seem to be here on Earth in a repeating cycle, which I'm going to call the Great Year. And many ancient cultures seem to be aware of a cyclical nature of something that repeats here on Earth on a very large scale of time. And that's why I think a lot of these monuments and things that we have are basically part of a much larger calendar system that the ancients were using.
Right. Well, the way you pronounce it suggests to me, I didn't realize it was panspermia, so that would suggest the Genesis, I suppose, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So, what is your theory? Was life, in what way was life seeded on Earth? What's your best guess?
Well, my best guess, really is that we seem to be in some type of a large cycle that is creating life here on Earth to evolve to a certain state and then drop out of this evolutionary state and kind of forget everything. So, when you speak of life in general, that's kind of a broader topic that I'll bypass for tonight and go right to the human evolution, if you don't mind. This is a really interesting topic, Art, because this is what led me to my research. Is I wanted to figure out where do we come from? Who is the oldest culture that has led up to us? And that led me into the Sumerian culture and Planet X and the Anunnaki, which is a good topic for us to touch on. But, from a higher level still, I started to realize that there seems to be a larger cycle of time that all the ancients were aware of. And we know of it, we just don't understand it. We hear things called the Golden Age or the Dark Ages, or why there's a division of the heavens into 12 parts into these zodiacal symbols. Well, it seems that the ancients were aware of some knowledge and used a system of time based on astronomical movements, which is just now starting to come into our comprehension in modern times.
All right. You're suggesting, I believe, that Darwinian evolution is flawed because you say they will never find the missing link. How do you know that?
Right. Well, Darwinian evolution is, I think, this view that everything simple is going to become ever more complex. So if we go further and further back into our history, we should pretty much just find more simple cultures and tribes. And into the future, we're just going to become super advanced. What I'm seeing is actually that's not the case. It seems that there's a cycle here on Earth that is repeating. And it's a large cycle that lasts around 24,000 years. Now, a lot of the ancient cultures made reference to the fact that there is this cycle. The Mayans got a lot of publicity recently because they talked about a calendar system that was so accurate, and their calendar came to an ending point in 2012. Well, it wasn't actually an ending point, it was just an ending point in one of their calendars. So it's just very interesting, Art, that we can talk about some of the specifics tonight, in that many different ancient cultures were aware of this large cycle of time and built monuments that align to specific star constellations that are kind of like markers in space as to where we are in this large cycle of time.
Okay, I still missed it somehow. You're saying that we will never find the missing link.
Yeah, I kind of think so. I'm sorry.
I really want the answer to that. Why will we never find the missing link?
I don't think that we'll not ever find the missing link. I just don't think that right now we're ready to accept what it is. And in my opinion, it has to be some type of genetic intervention. Whether that be from an alien civilization or some lost culture that we're not on the record of understanding now. But it appears that if we look at the anthropological bone records of Australopithecine, Neanderthal, and comparing this bone to that bone, when we get to us and compare us to the closest relation of a Neanderthal, there's a huge gap between them and us. So somehow, magically, there was some type of a genetic intervention that took the hominoid that was maybe evolving here naturally and kind of made it into us. And I say that just from a very high level of, if you look at a basic human and you put them naked in the jungle and have them run around, their skin would get, cut by branches, they'd get sunburned. And if you look at the ape and how strong they are compared to us, and all the body hair that protects them, we are just extremely different at many levels when we look at this Darwinian evolution of bones and such.
All right, that's fascinating. I do have a question now. Is it possible, Jason, that if there was, and by the way, I believe it could be true, there was some genetic modification achieved by a power that we don't understand. If that occurred, and I'm not a scientist, is it possible that a geneticist could uncover evidence that occurred?
I think so. And as we, further decode the human genome, I know that there's already a lot of what they call junk DNA and things that are in our DNA that they're just kind of scratching their head going, well, I guess it does something, but we don't really know.
Right.
A good friend of mine, Lloyd Pye, who I'm sure you're also familiar with.
I know very well.
Yeah, and I hope he's doing better. He's had some bouts with health recently, but he's a trooper. And he really did a lot of work around the genetics and wrote a book called Everything You Know Is Wrong, where he kind of gets deep into the genetic side of looking at the various elements of our gene code and breaking down where these anomalies exist and why they should be called out.
I'm not sure that finding it would be a problem. If a geneticist did find it, one could still say, look, that's where God's hand touched the human, or created the human, if you will. Or one could suggest that a race far, far ahead of ours stepped in and did the deed.
Yes, well, I guess only time will tell as we, our sciences advance more so that we can use, various quantum computing here in the future, I guess, and do things where we can get a much more whole and complete view of our genetic code. And if we ever do get to interact with other, publicly, if we ever get to interact with other life forms of intelligence, then there might be very interesting DNA samples from them that we can compare. But right now, it's all kind of a door shut. There aren't any aliens. No one's willing to cross that line scientifically. So that's why I spent my time in the last decade or so really looking at the ancient evidence. All of the modern things with aliens and even our genetics and science and stuff, it's very interesting, but what we do have is just a wealth of information from all these ancient cultures, and the things that they went to great lengths to communicate to us, which we now think of mainly as mythology, really deserve another eye and looking at that evidence and saying, well, all these things that have happened in the past that we think are mythology, as our scientists kind of start to merge more with what's possible in the science fiction realm, I think we can see that some of the stuff in the past starts to raise people's eyebrows a little bit more and pay attention when we look at, various structures and understand that the architecture and building skills that went into some of these monuments is very intriguing.
Okay. All right. Did you see the series After Man, I think it was called, where it showed 100 years after man was gone from the planet, 1,000, million?
I don't think so.
Too bad, because it showed what would happen to, for example, American architecture. Our buildings, everything that is man, would virtually disappear given enough years, and that sort of fits into what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, and that makes sense, and we get left with just a random piece of an artifact or tablets or texts, or tales. And so, Mark, for me, some of these ancient cultures, it's really interesting to see how they've played out scenarios in even more recent times that people can relate to, that allows us to look further back in the past. And let me give you an example. I know you've heard the term cargo cult. So
I have.
Yeah, and so for your audience, in like World War I, World War II, when we first started flying U.S. troops over Australia and Africa, and we landed in certain rural areas where, a tribesman had never seen a white man, or they'd never seen a biplane in technology. Soldier gets out, lights up a cigarette, and holds out a voice recorder and records the Aboriginal's voice and plays it back to him. The Aboriginals are freaking out. They're like, wow, it's like a god, and the ship that he came in, what is this? So even as recently as World War I and World War II, we see it playing out that when soldiers left, and I should also mention, every now and then, soldier camps would get drop shipped, like a cargo plane flies over and just drops a bag of goods. Sometimes that bag of goods would land in the middle of the tribe instead of the camp, and they'd crack it open and find all these things falling from the sky, and you'd be like, oh, So when the soldiers left, a
like
lot
a
of
Coke bottle, for example.
Exactly, yeah, like that funny movie.
Let me tell you just a very brief story. I went up into communist China with Bob Crane and his wife, and this was years and years ago, just after it kind of opened. And we went into some small villages, and Bob Crane's wife is a blonde. And I'm telling you, Jason, people came out of their homes in these little towns and just stood and stared in almost disbelief. They hadn't seen Westerners, and a Westerner with blonde hair, that's big time. So it's kind of like that in a way. I mean, they were so isolated that they were just amazed to see Westerners, see blonde hair. Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
Just wanted to squeeze out that analogy before I get it. Was simply that the cargo cult is that, when the soldiers left, the Aboriginals started to scrape out runways, made straw models of aircraft, and started to kind of worship these as items, hoping to entice the soldiers to come back. And so,
are you referring now to the runways down in Peru, that kind of thing?
Well, not really. I mean, that's a different set of circumstances, but just in general, the idea of a cargo cult, even in recent times, we see how greatly it affects these Aboriginals. So when we look back into the past, places like Bolivia and Peru and South America, we see these very clear attempts to communicate to whatever must have been in the sky at that time. And the paradox there is that none of the civilizations that were human at that time had hot air balloons or gliders or any type of flight, that they were clearly communicating to people in the sky.
Clearly. I mean, you sound pretty sure about that.
Well, we look in, for instance, Peru, where the Nazca lines are, since we bring that up. We have that wonderful figure of El Astronato carved into a mountainside, and he's kind of, they're waving hi to anybody that would see him. And any of those structures in Peru, like the runways, or what really intrigued me are actually in the foothills, some of the mountains right in that range in Bolivia, we find very large geometric patterns. And you can't see any of these. You can't see El Astronato or any of the Nazca figurines, as most people know, unless you're in the sky in some type of conveyance that allows you to be above the surface of the ground.
Yes.